We finally got it. What's good, everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to Game Theory, FNAF, the ultimate timeline. So I guess it was finally coming out. I am nervous. Mainly because depending what we hear here, and if there is some large amount of solitary proof that if what's going to be explained canon, then this literally can change every single detail of the whole story. The things I'm curious about is, well, when it comes to this whole timeline frame thing, is probably not related to information I want to know. Because, when it comes down to it, there's questions that never have been answered, and we don't really have any clues or answers when it comes to the whole series. One of them was, what's Mrs. Afton like? What happened to her? Because I don't know. It's a big mystery to me, and all that, because without doubt, William wasn't always a bad person. Otherwise, he would never got married and had 3 kids. That's obvious. But I'm curious to know what the wife of William Afton's like. All we really know is Ballora, her design and everything about her is based off Mrs. Afton. And that's really it. It was even confirmed in Security Breach, but it doesn't really give many answers to her. Ballora is still a big mystery that we have yet to solve. And besides that, I wonder what made William go AWOL. Because, again, he wouldn't be a awful person at the beginning. Because, truth in all honesty, no one's born evil. And as much as one would like to say, one could be born mischief, one could be afraid of everything, one could be very happy, one could be all plain looking, one could be all neutral since they were born and all that, but no one's really born evil. But the same thing is, no one's born purely good. What makes a person define as good and evil is the choices and options they do in their life and what caused them to do it. Because sometimes the most awful people can sometimes come from the best people that one would know. One with pure gold heart intentions and all that. But it all comes down to a single factor, quoted by a crazy psychopathical fictional character. It only takes one bad day to have your whole world flipped upside down and to change from pure to the most wicked of the world. And anyone who can actually guess where that quote, the first part of the quote, came from, in the comment section below earns a cookie. Find a cookie or ask for a cookie and have one, because you honestly deserve for that. But yeah, that's just some of the few questions. Others is like, why did Michael decide to bully Evan? Is Evan Gregory? Who's Vanessa, and what does she factor into this whole situation? Because when it comes down to the fact of Elizabeth, the Elizabeth theory, that is, it just doesn't make sense. But Vanessa's last name always bothered me because her name is Vanessa A. We don't really focus on last names. Heck, we don't know the missing children's last name except for Charlie, and her father is technically Henry, and we don't. And but okay, the main point is, when it comes to other characters in the story, we don't really focus on a last name. The only characters we focus the last name on is Henry, Charlie, Elizabeth, Michael, Evan, and William. The fact that we're going to the case that Vanessa's last name starts with an A honestly bugs me a lot, because it's an undeniable thing that constantly has me worried, because that last name must mean something, because no one brings out a last name in this series unless it's lore related. You may call me crazy, but anything in this series is possible. Other than that, I really am curious about how this all started. And if I don't stop talking, I don't think I'm ever going to get that kind of information. So with this said, I hope if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when a new video comes out. I got like tons of other stuff that I want to question about this whole series, but I don't really know where to begin on that, and it's bugging the heck out of me. But in the end, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Nevertheless, the link to this video that Game Theory created that I'm reacting to, the link to this video is in the description below. So if you want to see this video uninterrupted, and you don't hear me blabbing on and off, and you want to analyze it from beginning to end and all that, it's down in the description. So, yeah, do that if you want to do all that. Also, give Game Theory some love and support by hitting the like button on this video for them, and subscribing to them if you haven't done it. But, yeah, with all this said, let's start this video, shall we?
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games, 8 whole years, all leading.
Yeah, 19 books, 11 games, 8 years. Gosh, dang, it's still surprising that it's been 8 years. I'm not joking, 8 years has passed, and we're this far in. Like, it feels like it's been half that time, 3 to 4 years, not 8. It's crazy, really.
To this moment, the ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together.
Okay, jealousy. Okay, I think that's going into the theory last time, where we talked about how William and Henry made two separate things. I mean, we're two separate places, and Henry got more people going to his place than William, and it led to a whole lot of jealousy, and then probably some other stuff that may or may not be mentioned here. If you haven't seen that, go check out Game Theory. It's Game Theory's channel. I'm gonna leave that link. I'm gonna leave that link in the description below too, so that you can enjoy both. Now, let's continue on.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life. This one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kinda nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018, back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But
To be honest, when that timeline theory came out, I wasn't really surprised. I mean, the guy's quote is literally, "I always come back." Guy always finds a way to do it. What this is... let's see, this is like, what? The... They already tried killing him 4 times already? Am I hearing 5th? Am I hearing a 5th? Well, technically, should we call the most recent the 5th? Because they did try to technically kill him in the virtual world, but it didn't work. I'm gonna call it 4.5. I don't really know about that one. That's more of a iffy, depending on some people. But yeah. As for Fazgoo, I still think that's freaking stupid. I mean, seriously. The concept of it's ridiculous.
since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at.
True, true, and true. Still don't believe that the movie is ever gonna come out. Honestly, I'm kind of giving up hope on that, but if they do it, I hope they take their time with it and try and make it as accurate as possible. Even if it's universally different, like who the main character isn't related to anything going on at all. But still keep like the lore intent to it. Because in all honesty, I don't want to have like a repeat with like Avatar, the live action movie. Well, Avatar: The Last Airbender, live action movie, and Dragon Ball Evolution. Gosh, that movie sucked. Anyway, yeah. Holding out my hopes there.
It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today.
Duh.
The lore at this point is complicated. It is
Complicated wouldn't even be the right word. Calling it complicated is putting it lightly. Chaotic would probably be the correct term to go by. Considering the fact that every new piece of lore, even the biggest of lore, can actually throw everything out of whack, in theory-wise.
It is full of speculation and theory, so to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But
Well, let's see. 8 years of everything FNAF produced. 11 games, 19 books, and you gotta take apart every single detail from all these sources and every single game. And considering that we have some informational stuff, like something about the animatronics, if I'm correct, and the survival guide. Well, duh, it's gonna be the biggest, most complicated timeline to ever explain, because you gotta explain every single detail.
when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create.
Again, all of this is not wrong. I'm still curious, what caused him to go this way? Immortality might be a thing, but one does not go for immortality without a reason.
Only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation of Freddy's, how the business started and how it came into being, the Afton era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF. Everything.
Modern FNAF. Okay, so if I get this right, that means that post-Purple Guy is everything after Ultimate Custom Night. While the Afton era is, if I'm understanding this correctly, is the time where I guess William has reasons to start the killing. Is that he done? Yeah. And the first half, the first bit, is everything before that. So everything which led up to the point. To his reasons for killing? Okay. So we're getting his beginning until we get to the most... Okay. I'm trying to put this all together. And judging by the timetable, 19 minutes, I don't think that's a good enough time to explain everything. I mean, even the timeline before it took 2 parts to make.
That happens after the pizzeria simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of nowhere, as well as just points I wanted to...
Oh, wait. Okay, so the Afton era is when he starts the killings to FNAF 6. Well, number 3 is Ultimate Custom Night 2 right now. Before the Security Breach DLC. Got it.
To talk about further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm gonna merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best.
So you're going to make 3 separate videos, and then a 4th video which combines them all, and you don't get, the explanation on why you did it. Okay. So if I'm right about this. And this is about the beginning. We're learning everything about how Fazbear's was created, how Henry and William met, what they did, and to see if his previous theory's right. Okay. That's cool.
Best, most satisfying, most complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back to a few times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Well, that wasn't cryptic at all. Well, at least we now understand that William, well, with that hint, William wasn't a madman. Since before everything, he only became a madman around the time Fazbear's came up.
Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but
Eh.
all the way back in the 1930s.
The 1930s? You caught my attention. Wait. 1930s? Wasn't that the time of the Great Depression?
It was the throes of the Great Depression, and people were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, fourth highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transits.
So it is
People
about
looking
that.
for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately
Yeah, that time period sucked. Economy went down. Money problems. I think it was the I'm trying to remember the name. This always happens to me. I try to remember something very important, but it blinks out in the back of my mind. It freaking sucks that happens. Yeah, I don't remember. Frick. Shit. But yeah, basically, economy went down. Money was a problem, and the sad yet crazy thing to actually get us out of that was World War II. I'm not joking. And remember this if you have history class. The only way we got out of the Great Depression was when war happened. And not just any war, but World War II. So without that war, we would still be in Great Depression until later in the 1900s. That's how effed up it was. We had wars to prepare for, we had to do all this and all that, and we were truly out of the Great Depression when World War II happened. It freaking sucks that one of the most deadliest things in the world, World War II, was the thing that got us out of the Great Depression. Freaking crazy.
moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits: a simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie.
So this piece of evidence came out in security breach. 50 cents? Oh shoot, that's right. Money back then was freaking crazy. While these days you can get certain foods from a food cart or something, you have to pay like a few bucks, like 10 for some, 5 for others, sometimes 2. Back then you only had to pay like a couple cents. That barely would equal $1 just to get some food. If anyone right now actually went back to that time period with that much money, you'd be a multi-billionaire? At least I think so. But I don't think it would be a good idea, because that would just be flaunting your money in the biggest, most tragic time in American history.
Cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dance.
Okay, I saw that note. Basically, entry fee for something like this would be $9. And then some food? So basically you had to get like, okay, $9 a person, depending on if they have the youth thing or not. But since it's basically like seeing an animal doing something, I think like 5 I think it's not gonna be that. I think it's basically gonna be the opposite, and that's pretty okay actually, but still kinda crazy.
Dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a small.
Okay, so the most expensive thing was $1 at the time for one entry ticket. And okay, so the cheapest would be 9, while the most expensive would be, it said here, it was either 19 or $18. So that's fucking crazy. I mean, that means you can only pay for like 1 or 2 people if you were like going on a date, and that would be like, well, $36 to $38. And that's not kind of food. Oh, dang.
Smaller show, like the type from the Von Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William Afton. The bear could dance, it could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of.
So his nickname was Billy? Well, okay, so his nickname's Billy. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. and it went on for years. So that means this started around 1930. That means this went on for a couple years. Now, this depends on the lifespan of a bear. So the question is, how long can a bear live? Since it's a brown bear, 20 to 30 years. So, considering that it's not cub, you can take away 5 to 10 years and produce an actual age for William at the time. Due to the fact that Silver Eyes and such is around the time period where Charlie died and all that, and from the images, William doesn't look old. He looks close to his 40s. So, considering the fact that Fredbear's Family Diner doesn't open, well, Fazbear's at least, or the original FNAF, I don't know. Let's say the TV show at least, which was in 1973. Yeah, and since he's a kid right now, and it has to be after that, because you gotta consider other things and all that. And since a brown bear can live for 20 to 30 years, and we gotta take it out of its cub life, so that's 10 years old in 1930, so it's probably, and considering the fact, let's see, William E. And then we gotta consider the fact of when in the 1930s. It could be, actually, when did the Great Depression start? I knew it was in the 30s, but I can't remember on the top of my head. When did the Depression start? And since, okay, it started probably, okay, so I got a time limit, and it still was happening until 1939, where the preparations for World War II was starting to happen, because they were trying to fix it as much as they could between the 40s until we got to World War II in the close to the 1950s. 1950s. I don't. I'm trying to make a best guess as I can at the moment. I'm sorry it's taking me this long. Let's see. I would like to say 1940, in the 1940s. Mid 1940s. Okay, so with that said, actually, hold on. Let's consider this and put 1973. Or was it 83? 83, I think. That would mean William is 40. Okay, so that means William, by the time he's killing people, is late 30s, early 40s? At least, for my guess?
Bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park.
Okay, so he has to be like an adult. And most people go to college and all that at 18. Some a bit younger. Oh, so. Huh. So if that's the case, and. Okay, never mind.
The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream.
No, 1950s. Because he said 1950s, so that would mean. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's like mid to late, so that would mean. Okay. Yeah, it's still the same answer as before.
He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough, with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds.
Oh, so that image shown to us in FNAF 3 wasn't animatronics. It was actually suits made from hand. Well, technology wasn't much of a big gate back then. Clever.
Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animals.
Oh, yeah. Chica's Party World. That was mentioned in Sister Location, if I'm right. And because of that. Yes, I see now. Because if I'm right, Chica was a part of the mediocre, from a previous theory, Chica was a part of the mediocre melody. I see. Wait, William didn't own it? What?
animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do: make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic. Magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe.
Okay, so Silver Eyes actually mentions this type of thing before. Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that one to be fully true, but I guess that's the case.
Off to one side of Chica's party world was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And
Okay, first off, anyone can make a bear.
adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear.
Okay, yeah, that would actually bring proper anger, since it's one thing to make a bear mascot, but copyright of a name is something else, sadly. Because let's be honest here, you can have a similar idea, but to do it exactly like someone else, name-wise and so on and so forth, that's copying almost every little detail. But yeah, that's not really cool. At least in the name department, that is. Wait, wouldn't technically William get copyrighted? Because his bear? And, actually, who gets in trouble for copyright here? William or both him and Henry? That's confusing.
A direct copy of his own Fredbear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's party world over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult.
Also, I'd like to note that we just got a clear image of Henry Emily, and I am freaking ecstatic to that, because I have always wondered what the man looked like. Because all we got was this little 8-bit figurine of him. So yeah, this is actually really cool. But ouch to the whole money thing. Because I can actually see why William would be angry. I mean, put yourself in his shoes. You got a guy who made his own thing. Yeah, that's okay. But then he copied the bear. One of the things you start out with. And then you, like, abuse the literal F out of it. And it being the situation at hand. And then you just come, and then the guy just comes up gives you money because of unknown reason, and yeah, I wouldn't be fully okay with it. I'd be kind of bitter too, because the fact that of the whole thing with the bear being annoying. I mean, you can actually out-business someone with your own ideas and all that. And sure, you can make your own bear, but actually copyrighting the name? Well, what the frick?
Another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name.
I see, so this was also mentioned in Silver Eyes. The whole money thing going on, and their rise to power and all that. Okay. I can see where you're going with this.
Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that released, ranging from masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
I'm sorry, Gregory.
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre, so they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others
Okay, that will explain that bit of information. Considering the ending and all that.
though would fare much better, like a new pirate fox as well as a blue guitar playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smooth.
Well, yeah, that kind of sucks, but your idea of the rabbit's still alive with Bonnie. You can't really deny that that's still a good thing. While it might not be the original design base, it's still actually really good. Your idea works. Just you have to change the color. Sure. Might not be the best excuse, but come on. At least the idea is still alive. One can't really complain with that.
He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter. He had a thriving business. And best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there?
The root of all evil. The previous game theory about FNAF, yeah, I remember that bit. It was very interesting, to say the least, to know all these different parts and ideas work together so well. It also makes me believe that some of the stuff William did was honestly planned. I mean, considering all these details with the fact that it was like, I don't know how to describe it. He just knew all this stuff and learned it and was improving and mastering it like a prodigy. And that makes me think all the stuff he has done was honestly planned. Even the things that led to his downfall feel like it's planned now that all this is said.
Had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1.
So they're saying everything done, everything they did, everything they shared achievements on, and Henry was getting all the glory, all the credit, and all that. Honestly, that sounds a bit fucked up, because... And without really knowing Henry's total personality, he could have just sucked up the praise and just said he was the one that really did it all. Like a glory hog, and yeah, that kind of can make the situation worse, but I don't think Henry is that way. At least I hope not.
Of the story. That said, at the end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without him just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. That just doesn't make a lot of
Yeah, that's true. But, if it was the case, that would be a freaking OP old man. If he was, but no. At most, he would be late 30s to early 40s when he started killing. I mean, at least that old. And I'm using that term loosely, because for all I know, my calculations could be wrong. And wait, 18. Gotta be like that old. And with animatronics being out, okay, so that would be that. It's leading. I'm now having problems. I'm actually believing that he might actually be mid-30s. Oh my gosh.
Logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. The Fredbear Singin' Show thing also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of this story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself. There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fredbear was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the
Well, yeah. The spring-lock suits were definitely 5 fingers, since someone would have to wear them. Yeah, I can see his point, though. And it does make sense with everything being put together.
graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now, I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fred Bear. And yet, there are two key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And two, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off? Henry. We've talked extensively about how the
Yeah, that would make sense. But if that's the case, that would mean Henry wasn't always a good dude, so...
mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's...
Okay, yeah, that would make sense too. I don't know. I don't read a lot about Henry. All I know is just the main important parts from his book counterpart in the game, and his game counterpart.
Enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages, Nedbear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? Few things, actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location, so it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story of the Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Nedbear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with a theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location, a detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all of this a big leap? Yeah. Is it connecting a lot of dots that are very...
Yes, it is. So, she can have someone in their body due to pettiness against Henry. Yeah, I can see it, actually. It's not the most unbelievable thing that was said.
spread out across the franchise than I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years? Absolutely. But I think it makes sense. It also serves as a clean answer to a lot of the random threads that Scott's been leaving dangling for years. So with all of that in mind, my friends, we can close the book on the foundation of Freddy's. And don't worry, next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation, Part 2, the Afton era.
Ooh. I can see some parts, because you're gonna have to talk about Mrs. Afton, which is like a big thing that's gonna probably put a wrench in everything. Because, again, we know nothing about Mrs. Afton. Then we're gonna have to go about Evan's trauma, if he does have it, and if he saw something or not. We also have to go over the fact that why Michael decided to bully Evan. And we also have to go over the fact and details about Elizabeth. And then we're going to have to go into the order of who died first, Elizabeth or Evan. And we have to go over some stuff that probably would make William just snap. So, in the end of all of this, before, after all the kids were killed, it was just only William and Michael still alive. So that means that William and Michael, so... Well, actually, we still don't know about Mrs. Afton, so... Ugh. You want to explain about the whole Afton family? You got one big problem, and that's Mrs. Afton.
I promise, it will actually be next week this time. No more waiting around. I am just as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise. You know what else I promise? I promise that we'll actually get to talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the games anyway. Even back in the early days of FNAF, we were decoding images and source code that Scott fed us through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things, now they're just modern extensions of that. All of it is crucial to understanding this franchise and its lore. Unless, of course, Steel Wolf finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
They wanted to what?
To do is get kind of back to... I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind
of... They wanted to do something about back then?
Kind of like...
That's crazy.
Of like Fazbear Entertainment.
Also, you really caught my interest. Okay.
of Freddy Fazbear.
But in the meantime, while we wait for that inevitably cryptic game, I hope that this start to the timeline helps to fill in some of those gaps. I'm excited to share part 2 with you next week. If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell, make sure you do it now so you're notified when that part drops. I cannot wait to see your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I remind you, it's all just a theory. A game theory! Go easy on me. Tried my best.
Now, honestly, this was an interesting thing to go over. All the details to go over from before then was pretty solid, if I have to say so myself. It also goes over the information of William and Henry's relationship and how they started working together and everything. Also, with all the facts that prove that's true, especially the one about the manual and, well, technically encyclopedia for the animatronics, it's hard to dispute it. Though I do definitely think it's going to be harder to talk about the Afton family after this, because you can get as much information you want about the kids and William. It's just the problem of Mrs. Afton. Because, unless they say that she died during childbirth, and William made Ballora mold after her to keep her, like, presence alive or something like that, then there's nothing really to go over on that. And, well, not really nothing, it's just hard to talk about someone we have almost no information about, since all we really do know is her and Ballora have a connection, and that's because Ballora's modeled after her. And that she possibly looks like Elizabeth. Green eyes, same hair. Because, if we go into sister location, Michael mentions that they thought he was William. So that means that Evan and Michael look like William. So that means, and with William's description within the books, well, let's put it this way. They're gonna have similar face design, hair, and eyes. And with that said, and since Elizabeth doesn't have the same eyes as William, well, it's obvious she got it from her mother. But yeah, with all this information gathered, I got an idea about the beginning. Though I don't know about the whole thing with William and Henry. Like, was Henry really a jerk to name his bear closely similar to Fredbear, or did someone told him to do it? Because that honestly would kind of make it Henry's fault to a degree on why William became the way he is. Though, technically, his actions did cause William to go through some anger, grief, and sadness and all that. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below as well. Hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. You'll know when you're subscribed when the red subscribe button turns gray. Hit the notification button, be notified immediately when new video comes out. You'll know when you're notified when the bell is lit up. Other than that, the link to this video and the link to the channel to said video will be down in the description below. So with that said, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.